Hello and welcome to Mindset Matters. This is episode 5. I'm keeping track. So today I thought I would just really want to talk about my experience in Australia and how it has changed my life for the better since moving here. We moved here in 1995, and because I'm writing my story at the moment, I've kind of just gone back in time and really thought about some of the events, and I've realized some very important things, and there are so many lessons learned from my experience here. So I just want to talk about it today because it's so important. Because sometimes when you live in a place your entire life, you don't really know anything different. But I came from a very different world, so I kind of know, I can have a comparison. So anyway, unfortunately, the first few years of my life when I arrived, I was in a very abusive place with my biological father. He was not a very nice person, so I don't really have much memories in the first few years. Most of my memory was how to escape that hellhole of a unit that putting ropes on the balcony and trying to escape or something. Those are the kind of things that I think about. But it was really after that time that I got out of that place that memories started to become more, I can actually remember stuff. So the first thing that I feel like have truly changed in my life is what you don't know about me. If you see the way I talk now, you'd never believe that as a little kid, 4, 5, 6-year-old, I was you may as well think I couldn't talk. I was mute. When I was out in school settings, I was terrified. I was just not able to say anything because adults around me were really scary in China. They were really angry. I just remember at school we were all late. One day we were late, and then the teacher was like, "You're late, get up on the desk." And then the teacher was like, "You go and lie on that desk and just sleep there. If you want to be late, then you can just sleep on the desk." And it was this humiliation of this little kid who was 6 years old in front of the whole class. And that's normal for us. And there were other times where I just remember, I have this distinct memory of my teacher in first grade. She was like, "Today we're gonna have a guest here, and I'm gonna teach the lesson, and you're gonna behave, and if you don't behave, serious consequences will happen." And then she basically said, it's really weird because back then she said there was a specific way of raising your hand. You can't just raise it like that. No, that's wrong. You gotta raise it like this. I don't know why. She just said, you have to raise it like this. If you don't raise it like this, then you it's wrong and it's bad. So during the lesson when that guest was there, she taught as usual, and the students actually were just raising their hand like that. And then maybe they spoke a little. Well, after the lesson, she basically said, "Screw you all, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back." So she left the class. And all the students were dumbfounded and terrified. And every single student, or I think it was every student, started crying. They were like, "Oh my God." And I just remember feeling so afraid and confused, and it's oh my God, she just left. What are we gonna do? And the thing is, I don't remember what happened next. Obviously she would have came back, I think. I don't think she really would have just left, but she was so angry she just left. And all the kids were distraught. And that's just my memory of, even though a lot of the teachers in China were really nice to me because they knew I was shy. I wouldn't even ask to go to the toilet if I wanted to. If I was desperate and I'd pee my pants. Basically, I'd have to ask the guy next to me. This is every single time it happened. I'd ask the guy next to me if he could ask the teacher for me. And if one time I just remember we went on some kind of trip on the bus or something, and we came back and I was so busting, but I couldn't ask to go to the toilet and I peed my pants. So, it's I was so afraid to even ask anything because of just how people were just really strict and quite scary sometimes. And there was other instances where, I don't know, just my memory of the school environment was just so rigid and scary, and I just really felt like whenever I was out, I was like a little mouse, maybe even quieter than a mouse. I think mouse made more noise than I did. Um, I would go to school and I'd be like, just not necessarily. As soon as I got back though, as soon as I got home for some reason, I was really loud. I was like, I was just like talking like a crazy person. And people who knew me personally just find it really hard to believe that I was even the same person. They'd be like, why are you just like acting so different? Like, they thought that I was pretending or something. And it's so weird because I just remember feeling that severe panic and shyness when I was out and I just couldn't speak to anyone. So anyway, this was pre-Australia. So of course, like this was when I was in first and second grade, which is all the schooling I had done up until the point where I left. So, and I was raised by my really wonderful, caring, loving grandparents since I was 5. And so before then, it's like, it was good, but then I had to leave my grandparents to start school in a different city, and that kind of really traumatized me. I think like leaving a caregiver that really is kind to you when you're little is very difficult. So I miss my grandparents like every single day of my life, and I remember even back then I had a lot of trouble eating, and I didn't really understand why that was, or like why I was like, I do remember just not wanting to eat. And I remember my mom telling me all these stories about how I just refused to eat, and she had to like really spend time, like 2 hours feeding me every single day. And come to think of it now, I'm like thinking like, oh, it's probably because I was really anxious, because later on as I got older, I had like a relapse of that. But because I was older, I was aware of it and I remember it more, so I know what it is. But when I was younger, I obviously had the same issue, but I wasn't aware of it and I didn't know what it was. So I had a lot of issues with anxiety even when I was really young. I had trouble eating. It took about 2 hours for my mom to feed me a meal, and I just remember like if I try to eat too much, I was very nauseous. So I just didn't really want to eat, and she would like ride her bike everywhere to try to look for ways to just help me find ways to, because she actually was really worried. She thought I would starve to death if I didn't eat that much, because it was just like this anxiousness of not being with my grandparents was too much for me at that age. And I don't know if you're aware, but a lot of Chinese parents are very, very, let's just say like strict. It's not that they do it on purpose. I think it's the way they're raised. They don't grow up hugging their kids, telling them they love them. They're just really focused on the schoolwork and doing well in class. And we spent weekends doing practice tests, believe it or not. It was like this test that our parents made, and we have to like get it perfect. But it was really their way of showing love, because it was just such a competitive place that if you don't get into like certain schools, you're definitely fucked. So like I feel like my mum was just so worried about my future that it was hard for her to even show any kind of gentleness or caringness, where she was just so worried. Whereas my grandparents were the type of people who were more like, laid back, and they were really just, they're totally against like yelling and stuff. So I remember like my grandfather would be so angry if my mum yelled at me. He literally yelled at her for yelling at me. So not having my grandparents was really difficult. But anyway, the first thing I remember is how much of a difference it made that someone was just nice. So anyway, after arriving in Australia, I spent about 3 years not knowing what's going on, because when you're in that abusive household, because my biological father was a crazy person, like he literally was just absolutely crazy. I have like, I don't know how, I'm not going to get into too much about the stuff happened there, but basically he was just very scary. Like he was like if you combined all the scary people I've met into one, then he's probably like that times 2. So anyway, I started school here, and the first thing I realized was how easy the schoolwork was. I started in grade 2 because they kind of pushed me back a year, which was really good because I needed time to catch up in English. They started me on the second grade, and the first thing I noticed when I went to school was why is all the kids just drawing pictures and freaking coloring it? I was like, wait a minute, it doesn't even matter that I don't know English. They're not even doing any writing, like, really complex writing, and they're not even doing, like, these complex things. What's going on? That's what I was thinking, because I was just in disbelief. I always remember the first day of school. Even though I don't remember much, I do remember the first day of school. I was handed a piece of paper to color in. So I was like, what? And then, of course, they said, you have to go to after school care. And I was like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Because after school care, to me, in my mind, was another reason to sit in a freaking room with, like, this teacher that was like, you have to do your work. And every student would just be sitting there, like, doing their work without ever making a single sound. And then I freaking went into after school care and found that people just played. Like, what? Like, my mind was blown, believe me. And we ate Vegemite sandwiches and cheese sandwiches, or all sorts of different sandwiches, while we played things and had fun. I was just like, what kind of world are we in? What's going on here? Because I had been so used to the fact that after school care was somewhere you do your freaking work in sitting down in this dark room. That's kind of what I was used to. So that was a big change. And later on, I did switch schools. I went to a different school, and I was really lucky because I know not everyone have positive school experiences, but I feel like I'm one of the very lucky people who have had very good positive school experiences. And because my mom has always been more of she's strict, but she's not as bad as those tiger moms that you hear about. Definitely not like that, but she's still pretty strict, like it's still like very much of an Asian parent thing. And a part of like what, like, I think because she also focused a lot on things that you didn't do well, or things that you still need to work on, rather than what you are doing well. Because that's the main thing I noticed, was how I was treated at school versus how mum was saying things was very different. Like, a lot of like Asian parents will focus on what you need to do or what you're not good at yet. So you can be getting a 98 freaking percent on a test out of 100, and they'll be focusing on the 2% you didn't do well. It's really just a different mindset, because they're so worried and panicked that they just can't ever like let you feel like you're actually doing well. I feel like that's the reason. They're too scared of you starving to death when you're older that they literally it's like every focus is on what you can do better. So I've heard of a lot of other people's experience like that, where like you could be so talented at something, but they'll always say something like, oh, like you're not good at anything. And then a lot of times they'll also compare you to other kids and say, oh, why are you so like not doing as well as this person? Look at her, she's got A's everywhere, you don't even get a B or whatever, just those kind of things. I know, like, maybe their purpose is to motivate you to do better, but honestly, a lot of times I find what it does is just makes your self-esteem go down the drain, and it kind of makes you feel like you're just a crap person and you can't do anything right. So one of the first things I've noticed was the impact of one person has on a human. Like, especially for me, like, the impact of just one person was huge for me. When I was at school, I was very, very lucky to have come across my music teacher in the 5th grade and 6th and 7th. She was there the whole time. I was really lucky. She was one of the kindest people I'd ever seen up till that point, besides my grandfather. And she was so nice. I just remember how nice she was. Like, she was just, like, I don't know, like, there's something about her. She was just so nice. She never yelled at the students when they did the wrong thing. She was always patient, and she was so kind. And oh my God, I loved music class so much that basically I was obsessed with music ever since that time because of her kindness. It really was. Like, I got into, like, playing all sorts of like things like piano and all that, just because of this one music teacher. Because up until that point, I don't think I ever experienced a teacher that was that kind, and not just kind to me, but kind to all the students. Because a lot of times, yeah, the teachers were nice to me because they know I was really shy and I wouldn't speak, but they would like punish the other kids really severely, and I'd see that and I'd just feel really nervous. So my music teacher was like, growing up, she was like everything. Like, I just really, really, really just felt so inspired by her, just from her kindness act alone. And because of that, I love music. I was just so into like choir and singing and all that. I really, really, really loved it. And then I was lucky because when I went to high school, I also somehow attended one that had very nice and caring teachers. So it's like when there's like one, even when there is only one teacher or two or whatever, like, they can see your talents and they can actually say like, hey, you are actually talented, and they're encouraging. It makes all the difference. And it could just be one experience of one person. It really made all the difference to me. And I just remember, like, when I went into the school, I was as shy as I was before coming to Australia. I was like really quiet, didn't speak. But with the encouragement, I slowly started to feel more comfortable. Like, I wouldn't ever raise my hand in class. It's just something I couldn't do. Like, I just too scared. But I didn't feel like I was so scared of asking to go to the toilet and just random things like that. And if they ask me questions, I will of course answer. So it's like I just got so much better. It's like if you compare to how I was back then to now, it's like a huge difference. It is like the biggest. You wouldn't even know it's the same person, believe me. It's like, whoa, like, can someone really change that much? And I have to say, it's really just the encouragement and the kindness of a few individual people who have made that difference in my life. And that's why I always tell people that it's not about your looks, it's not about everything, it's about how you make people feel. And that's always what I believe in, because of these few special people in my life that have really made a difference. So anyway, what's really interesting is the way that people are in Australia. Well, mostly, I'll never say like everyone, because that's just impossible, and like not every Asian parent is also like really, really negative too, because I've met some really nice ones who are very positive. So, you know, it's not everyone, but a lot of my experiences, I found that like a lot of teachers or people I've known have been so encouraging to me, and that's something that really changed me when I was younger, because I used to just not feel like I could do anything. And when you're told for the first time, hey, you actually have a talent in this, I started thinking like, wait, really? Like, and then that's when I really started getting into things that the creative things that I really loved, like things that I'm passionate about, like creating sites. I started with creating websites, and then I wrote lyrics, I wrote poetry, I wrote all kinds of things when I was younger. I did lots of graphic design. It was just so much fun. And whenever people saw that, they would be like, oh wow, like you're doing it so well. And it's really cool, because I always felt like what I was doing was not enough or not as good. But sometimes when you hear that positive reinforcement, it's everything that makes you feel like, oh, you can do something. It can be done. So that's probably the single most important life event that has changed me when I moved to Australia. And it was something that I never actually experienced before, was that encouragement, was that like just people's kindness, that like some people are just so freaking kind to me that I couldn't even grasp. And I think also because I've had such experience with like really, really, like one really horrible person, I really appreciate like the good. It feels like I can compare it and I'm like, oh my god, so this situation, oh wow, I just really, really appreciate when I do come across someone who is really nice. And growing up, like, I think some of my teachers have been like the single most influential people in my life, because they just believed in me. And unfortunately, I know that not everyone has that kind of experience, but that's been my experience. I was just very lucky, and I loved that feeling of encouragement, and it just made me realize how important that is to a young person's mind, to be encouraged, to just show them that, hey, you're good at something, like keep going with that thing that you're good at, rather than, hey, you suck at everything, get better. Like sometimes negative reinforcement, like negative like motivation could work for some people, but other people like me will just feel like giving up. It's like, oh, like why even bother, right? Because a lot of times with added with negative self-esteem, it's even harder for someone to like turn that negative reinforcement into something good, or like wanting to do better. So I do find that it's very important. And it was the first time I had ever seen parents treat their kids different from what I was used to, which was just devoid of much emotion from what I remember. I, like, even to this day, the idea of like hugging my mom, saying I love you to her is like makes me wonder, like my hair crawl in panic and crazy, like it's just so awkward and so weird. And it makes me think that perhaps like a part of our brain actually legit is shut down if we didn't have that experience when we were little kids, because I just can't imagine doing that, and just the idea of it makes me feel so awkward and uncomfortable. And I know a lot of other people who's gone through that kind of situation. A lot of Asian kids will feel that way about their parents, like the idea. And the weird thing for me is I'm like, it's so weird to even receive compliments from my mom that I feel weird. It's like I almost want it's like I can't handle it. It's just a really weird experience. It's like I'd rather her be neutral than positive sometimes. It's like, and I'm just like, for all my life I've been trying to figure out why I thought that, or like what part of my brain is like just fucked up like that I actually would rather her say neutral stuff than positive stuff, because it's so weird. I think it's just like that feeling, like sometimes when you don't get that, like that part of you just shuts down, and then even if it happens later on, it's very hard to kind of, so that's what I think happened. But anyway, so in Australia, I was really, really given room to be creative. And I know now that, like, you can put a freaking piece of science or mathematic thing in front of me and I can spend 5 hours and feel like I'm going nowhere. Like, I can just be, like, completely oblivious to what's going on. I could be studying for 6, 7, 8 hours and I just feel like my brain cells are dying one by one and I just have no idea what's going on. But you give me a project to work on that's creative, like designing something that I really care about. Oh my God, I can spend 10 hours on it and feel like it's 10 minutes and feel so fulfilled and excited. So I never actually got to even explore my creativity in China because it's all about the academics. It's all about, like, gotta do well in the test. Otherwise, like, why else would we spend weekends doing practice tests, right? So I love being able to express myself more creatively, and just people were so much more laid back about, like, stuff to do with more creative stuff. Like, I remember I was really enjoying art class and stuff like that, and cooking, and they were all like subjects that I really loved because it was more the creative side. It's not just sitting down with numbers and I don't know what's going on. And honestly, to this day, I feel like I'm just copying like the formula, but I don't actually understand it. So as soon as the test is over, I have no idea what's going on. So that's just me with maths and stuff. But with the creative side, I just love it. It's so much fun. And like when I was doing like trying to at least do like that degree in university, I sucked at all my freaking subjects. I got like C's and almost D's, or like whatever, it was the worst ones, and all the papers I wrote was like just trash. But the one subject I excelled at was that flash animation where I had to come up with the history of the CD, DVD and stuff. So that was the only one I got really high results in. So being able to explore my creativity was something I know I would have never had a chance to if I didn't move to Australia, because it was just not an option. It was just not an option. Like, kids sometimes were forced to do kind of extracurriculum stuff like music, but that's like just like, oh, the more you can do the better, but that doesn't mean you can just ditch your academics. So that's something like it's funny because like the idea of the academics is so etched in my mind that I'm still having nightmares about finishing those damn degree courses that I failed at. So yeah, one day I'll pass it, hopefully, my dream, so I can move on. But anyway, so that was like one of the greatest things that I would have been able to experience growing up in Australia. It was just something that I never got to experience. And unless you actually were in that environment where as a kid you weren't allowed to do anything creative, you had to just do rigid homework all day or all night and had like almost no weekends or time for a break, you would just think this is normal. Like seriously, I honestly, I feel like if I'd lived that my whole life, I'd be like, hey, that's what kids should do. But because I had that different experience, I've really come to realize just how precious it is. I hope that kids will always be able to have more fun time to play rather than recite times tables like I had to do. Like I think by the second grade I knew all the timetables off by heart. And then it's funny because then like I remember I had like all the knowledge of every single freaking timetable, and then in the second grade they were like just teaching you 2 times 1 or something. I'm like, this is too easy. So, yeah, it was crazy. But like school for me was just such a bizarre and crazy experience that I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. So because of that experience, I got out of it feeling a lot more confident than I had started. So when I started, I was a really, really scared kid who didn't even know I was good at anything. I just felt like whatever. Like it was just like I sucked at everything is my mindset. And then when I finished, I was at least confident enough to do more basic stuff that I felt like, oh wow, I was able to do that. And that's just something that I'll never forget, because I don't think I would have been able to even start any of the creative stuff I'm doing now if it wasn't for my experience here, because it was just off limits. Our parents would have like said no, completely no. Like I still remember how different people's way of thinking was at school. Like I remember around the end, a lot of times when we were told that we got to find out what we want to do as jobs, like people were just really, really like open-minded, right? So some of the career advisors said that a lot of times don't worry so much, because what you're going to end up working on, your kids will end up working on, are jobs that haven't been invented yet. And the concept of that was really, really like open-minded. It's like they're basically saying, don't worry so much, you can just figure it out. I remember saying this to mum. Or like, I think it was also because I had a friend who was also from like Asian parents with Asian parents, and she was like 3 years younger than me, so we kind of were in the same situation. I remember just like they were like together that day, like talking, and we were like trying to tell them about what our career advisor told us. And I just remember her reaction. It was like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's not invented yet, that you don't know anything. You're going to have to just work on what you need. It's like doctor, lawyer, those 3 things. Accountant, those are the stable jobs. Don't bother with anything else. You'll be dead. So kind of their thought. So yeah, I will always be grateful that I've been able to grow up in Australia, because I've truly embraced my creativity. I feel like when I'm given a canvas to be creative on, I could come up with so many unique ideas. But if I'm forced to do numbers, I would just feel like a jumbled piece of goo. Like, that's just how I am. Even though my mom is the complete opposite. She can't do anything creative, but she loves numbers and stuff. She thrives in coding and stuff, but I just don't understand it. I'm looking at it like, and no matter how much people explain to me how it worked, I just completely like don't understand it. So at the end, like what I really do want to say is the simple act of encouragement and kindness what I received in Australia, and that changed my life completely. You wouldn't believe just how little it, like, how little one person's just, like, how do I say this? I'm thinking of, like, how little of an action one person can have on you that basically changes your whole life. And I have a lot of people, like my music teacher and my high school, like, I've had a lot of, like, really kind teachers in high school that also were really positive and always saw me as, like, a really, like, they were just all so positive to me. I feel so grateful for them, because they spent a lot of effort trying to get us to feel good about ourselves. It was not just a school where they, like, taught us the subjects. They actually did care about us, and that's very rare, and not every school has that. Like, not every person has that experience at school, but I felt really lucky that I was able to experience that. So they really tried their best. They would teach us values. They would teach us just things that you usually wouldn't think of learning at school. Like, they really went out of their way to get us to feel good about ourselves. And that was one of the most important things, because, as I always say here in this podcast, low self-esteem, fear is, like, some of the worst things that can stop a person from reaching their potential, reaching their goal. Like, you could be so good at something, but if you in your mind believe that you suck, then no one can convince you. And it's like you're just trapped, because you're not allowing yourself to reach your full potential. You're not even doing the stuff that would just show your talents. Like, you just hide them and think that they're not as good. And what's really tragic is a lot of times all those doubts are just in your head. Like, they're not even real. I've so many times heard people speak negative about themselves, and I'm looking at it from an outside point of view thinking, what on earth are they saying? They're so talented at this. Why do they think so negative about themselves? And honestly, children are so vulnerable because they believe everything that an adult says. That's one thing I've noticed, because when I was young, I was told crazy things by my biological father. Like, I have this magic machine that can hear everything you say, and if you dare to tell me lies, because he wanted to know what me and my mum spoke about on those weekend visits before I went to live with her. He wanted to know all the details of what we spoke about, and he said he had this machine that could detect it if I told him lies. And I really believed it. And I completely 100% told him the truth, because I believed he had this magic machine. Kids aren't old enough to detect adults' lies or adults' manipulation. They just don't understand. They will treat an adult's words as the words of, like, the sacred thing. You know what I mean? Like, the sacred word of, like, the truth or something. They'll believe it. And it's, like, tragic, because a lot of times, a lot of parents or adults could just really, really, like, take advantage of their innocence and belief that what you're saying is true by figuring out ways to scare you. And that's what happened to me most of the time, is I was just told things that scared me. Like, another thing that he also did when I was younger was tell me that if I didn't behave, he'd send me to the police station. One time when I was sorry about the glasses, I know that's really annoying. I'm annoyed too doing that. But anyway, one time he was really angry that I didn't want to come home from a friend's place, and then he dragged me into the car, and then guess what? He drove to the police station. He was like, "Police, come here and arrest her. She's been really bad." And he was actually yelling, but in the car. Like, I wish I had actually had him really call the police, because then he would have been in big trouble for abusing his kid. But then he said, like, oh, the police will catch you and, like, lock you up. And I believe that. It's crazy. We just don't know any better. So that's why I'm so grateful for the kind people I met here that didn't take advantage of me being a little kid. And they actually really, really planted this seed inside me. I feel so philosophical when I say that. It's like they planted a little seed that just sprouted and just grew into a big tree. And because of that, I feel so fulfilled. Oh my God, yeah, I love that analogy. Yes, that's what it feels like. Whereas, like, a lot of my previous experiences is like oh, you got to do this, otherwise like bad things will happen. And it was just fear-based motivation. Whereas in Australia, a lot of times what I received was encouragement, positive motivation, and that just made all the difference, because it actually really helped me believe. And a lot of times I find so much of our troubles with people, with different people, stresses that with different people have to do with our self-esteem. I'm going to give examples of different places I worked at and why I always found it difficult. So the first job I did was like, the first job that I really discovered that I had trouble with was one where I had to answer phone calls. And for some reason, just answering the phone call and saying the simple introduction, like, this is so-and-so from so-and-so, made me feel embarrassed, like you can't imagine. Like, I just felt like really embarrassed. And then every single person that was there, I kind of felt like, I just felt really stupid. Like, and because of that, it led me into so many different problems. Like, I wasn't able to speak properly. I wasn't able to say what my thoughts were. I just felt really stupid all the time, and that was the big problem, because when you feel stupid, you can't do almost anything. You can't work with people if you're always feeling stupid, because you're just going to be in front of them and feeling stupid. And I had the same problem when I was attempting to do the teaching degree, which I was like doing stuff and I felt really stupid. It was all because of that negative self-esteem that I was like, oh, I just feel stupid, so like, why would anyone want to listen? And that's like I spent my whole life trying to figure out how to overcome that. And when I think back to why I was so scared as a little kid, I really truly believe it's because most of the people I've seen, except for my grandparents, were just very angry or very nasty. And it's like, I'll tell you an example. For example, one time when we went back to visit, I was like a sick little kid. I was maybe like 10 or 12 or something like that. I had this high fever. I'm walking across the airport. It was either the airport or the train station. And we were walking a little bit slowly. And this person behind us was just started like yelling, like, oh, what the fuck are you doing? You're freaking like slowing me down. Like, it was like the full-blown yelling match between my mum and this lady who's just so pissed off because we were walking 2 seconds slower. Oh my god, it's like, it was just really, really bad argument. And through the 20 years I've been here, or 30, actually I'm 30 years, I'm older than I thought. I've never had that instance ever, and I've been really, really slow. Sometimes I'd be like on the phone, like, and I've never had experience where someone actually yelled at me from the top of their lungs because I was 2 seconds slow. So you could already feel like there's a huge difference in the attitude of people, and that's really good. Like, I just cannot believe how nice some of the people, or I should say a lot of the people are. So very nice. And when you've experienced negative, you come to really realize the positive a lot more. That's what I truly believe. Like, you have to see, sometimes you have to have a comparison to realize just how good things are. And that's what I really notice. I'm going to move the camera a bit because I can see that evil looking basket behind me. It's bothering me. So yeah, over there, it's like, anyway. So I've just been so grateful that to live in a place where I don't get yelled at for being slow all the time. Like, okay, no, I don't get yelled at for being slow all the time, as in I'm slow a lot of the time is what I mean, but I never get yelled at. That's what I meant. Yes, I'm trying to figure out what I'm even saying. So that's one thing that I truly believe that is really helped me come out of my shell, is the people being nicer and just more friendly. It's like, I'm no longer as scared of just talking to someone. Whereas before, I would just, like, as I said, you would not think I could even say anything. I'd just be silent. And I'll always remember when I first started school, like, people actually really thought I couldn't talk. Like, they were like, can you say things? Like, can you actually talk? Like, they were actually wondering if I would talk because I just didn't say anything. I just felt like I was too shy or too scared to. And it was just made all the difference when I came through the few years of this positive experience. And at the end, I just felt so much more comfortable. Like, I don't think I would even be able to pick up a camera and say a single word if it wasn't for those positive experiences with nice people, that I can actually just talk in front of the camera and share my story, because I'd be way too scared. And it's strange because when you have this negative self-image, you kind of just believe it like it's the truth. Like, you could actually be really good at something and not realize it, think you absolutely suck. And the sad thing is, a lot of times in your mind, it's 100% true that you believe you suck, even though someone else who's seeing it from the outside could see just how talented you are. And honestly, I feel like when you're a young child, it makes a huge difference with people's encouragement. I feel like sometimes when you get older and you get encouraged, and then your brain has almost like formed its connection, so it's harder to accept it. But when you're a child and you get some kind of like encouragement, it makes a huge difference. And that's one thing I really do feel like I was able to receive that changed a lot. And it was just so lucky. I was so lucky that I've been able to have that experience, because I cannot even imagine what life would be like if I hadn't received those kind of like little just encouragement along the way through the years. I really do believe I would be in a completely different person. I would be too scared to express myself. I'd be too scared to do anything. And it's just so amazing that I had that positive experience. And it's all thanks to moving to Australia, because I'm pretty sure I'd be either like starving on the streets or already dead by now if I hadn't moved here, because I just would be too scared to do anything, and I just wouldn't be able to even survive. I truly don't think I would be able to survive. And now to be able to share my story and share the things that help me improve my self-image, has been life-changing. It feels so good to be able to do that. And like, I honestly think if I told my past self that I'd be able to do this one day, I would have been so like, really? Like, no way. I wouldn't believe myself, because I just couldn't see it. But it really is like, it's almost like if you go back in time and see all the little changes of this thing, like this particular person is like changing, you would be able to see just how things changed if it was written in a way that, like, I'm thinking the butterfly effect, where it's like little things happen and it's just ultimately changed the course of my life. And I couldn't be more grateful. I really couldn't be more grateful. So to me, it's like the most precious memory to me in my childhood, is being able to grow up in an environment that is encouraging. And that's something that I truly believe that changed my life completely. Sometimes we overthink so much about how perfect we have to be in order to show up somewhere, in order to just make a difference to people. And we overthink on whether we need to look right, or we have to like sound right, everything. Like, we just overthink all these things. And whenever I think back to all the people, like the ones I mentioned before, that were so wonderful to me, like the reason why I remember them, the reason why I just have such positive feeling towards them, is really just a simple act of kindness that they did for me. And that's the thing, is like, it made me realize how unimportant all the physical stuff is. That if someone treated me in a way that just made me feel good in some ways, I really like everything to do with them. That I'll just like, everything about them will bring me some kind of positive vibe. It's just like, it's like, because someone is nice to me, it's like I'll like more of the way they speak, or their accent, or anything like that. It's like, it's just human nature for us to like things that are nice, you know? Like, have you had that friend who you just know you can trust and say everything to, but there's some people that you just feel unsure, like you're scared to say things? It's the same thing. Like, when you get that encouragement or that kindness, it just makes so much difference. And I cannot even say enough how it's changed my life. And I truly do believe I'm able to sit here and tell my story today and do it with this, almost like this passion and pride together. You know, it's like, oh my God, like, I've been able to achieve so much because of these past experiences of these kind people who just did such wonderful things for me. So yeah, thank you so much to all the kind people out there who's made a difference in my life. I truly do appreciate it. And yeah, let me know what's important to you growing up. I would love to hear what's one thing that is memorable or unforgettable to you when you're growing up. What's one thing that really shaped who you are? That's something I'm very curious about, because for me, it's always been that positive encouragement that really, really, really made a difference in my life.